Really thinking about Senator Graham and his escalatory approach, looking at wanting to bomb Iran, saying that on CNN just this week. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to be covering the chaos in Isreal and the unfortunate situation that has unfolded there. William, how do you feel events have been developing in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, rather?
Israel and Hamas, I think it's interesting how Israel is handling the situation. I was talking to one of my friends from California, and he was saying, basically, Israel's kind of okay, if there's going to be, terrorist attacks and, Hamas, it's okay, we're just going to start bombing them. And, I think kind of like we were talking about in another episode was, peacefully solving conflicts. In the Middle East, there's kind of more of a tendency, I think just because of the history, there's more of a tendency to, people refer to violence or bombings and so on and so forth. And so, I think solving the conflict in Israel, but also kind of having it be an opportunity for the U.S. to have a positive influence on Israel and say, hey, peacefully solving conflicts. And, I think it's interesting because the last terrorist organization we really took care of was ISIS, and we did go to war with them. But after taking out ISIS, that was when the Abraham Accords started, and that's when the Abraham Accords started, and that's when peace in the Middle East really started. So Trump says, he can solve the problem, of course, but it'll be interesting to see if his approach is kind of a peaceful approach or going to war with them, given that they're a terrorist organization. That's kind of interesting.
Right. And especially thinking about Senator Graham and his escalatory approach, looking at wanting to bomb Iran, saying that on CNN just this week.
Would you want to be drafted, or?
I would fight for the country if needed, but I think that we should absolutely try and avoid war at all costs.
Avoid war, yeah.
Yeah, because we don't need to be going to war with China or Russia or Iran. That would cost so many American lives and be a disaster for the country. Would be very sad to see the loss of young American life.
Yeah, especially since World War III, like we talked about, it's I'm sure there's troops on the ground, but the technology is just so much more advanced, that, it's do you do, overseas, I guess it'd be overseas in Europe and Asia, but troops on the ground, but would it be mostly troops on the ground and, nuclear weapons, or vice versa? It kind of, the future of warfare is interesting. But yeah, hopefully just peacefully solving the situation.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And did you see that Prime Minister Netanyahu has formed a unity government with his rival Benny Gantz?
No.
Okay, so they have teamed up. They're in a unity government now, governing together. So the conservatives and the centrist opposition have teamed up to form a wartime cabinet in order to take on Hamas.
Okay.
So how do you feel about that development?
So is it the U.S. government or U.S. military and who else? Or
No, Israel.
Oh,
so
Israel, okay.
Israel's government,
Uh-huh.
the conservative Benjamin Netanyahu
Benjamin
and
Netanyahu.
his Likud party have teamed up with the centrists and Benny Gantz in order to form a unity government.
Okay.
It's similar to what Churchill did during World War II.
Yeah.
He formed a unity government with Labour, who's the Conservatives' chief rival in the UK, in order to form a unity government there. So we're seeing a similar development now in Israel.
Yeah, peaceful military is good. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you
And-
think? What do you think about how they're kind of handling the situation? Or
Well, I would say that they're in a tough position because we certainly don't want any loss of civilian life. And it's difficult because Hamas is trying to use civilians as targets so that Israel will not attack them. And Hamas has taken civilians and military officers hostage. So that's very concerning to see what Hamas is doing. These people are brutal. They're just like ISIS, and they have to be stopped. So I think Israel is well within its right to declare war and ultimately fight these terrorists.
Yeah. I think, do you think the sort of issue will be solved before the next election or after the next election? Or?
I wouldn't be able to say. That's too tough to predict. I don't know how long this conflict will go on because we thought that the Ukraine-Russia war would be over in a week, and clearly that's still ongoing with basically no territory change whatsoever in recent months. So this could be an ongoing conflict. This could resolve rather quickly. I don't know. But what is concerning is to see the pro-Hamas rallies across the world, even in the United States, individuals on campuses advocating for Hamas,
Really?
calling for the death of Jews. Deeply
Oh my
concerning. Has to stop. France banned all pro-Palestinian protests, and it's a disaster to see.
Yeah, I think there should be more like pro-Israel.
Absolutely.
Clubs or programs. And, hopefully they can solve the conflict.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I've been Craig.
And William Burkholz.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.